Alright, so today we're going to be trying something a little bit different. I thought it would be fun to mix a history story with my artwork, and we're going to see how this turns out. So yeah, here's my explanation of the Mary Celest cartoon edition. A couple pointers though before we get started, so out of respect for the people who actually experienced this, I'm going to be drawing the main story in silhouette figures. I'm going to be throwing a couple jokes around, so sorry if they might offend some people. So the timeline for this video is going to be pretty simple. First, we're going to go through the main story, then we're going to go over some theories and debunk the really stupid ones that don't make diddly squat, and overall just make this a really memorable experience. So let's go. Alright, so picture this. It's 1872. The Atlantic Ocean is just sitting there looking all wet and ominous as oceans do. There's this ship, the Mary Celest, a brigantine which is basically a fancy boat with two masts and a vibe that screams, "I'm gonna become a historical mystery." Its captain was a man named Benjamin Briggs, and he was known as a pretty responsible and chill dude. So Captain Briggs, his wife, and their 2-year-old daughter, and 7 crew members decided, hey, let's sail to Italy, and let's deliver denatured alcohol. You know, the stuff that you can't even drink because it's basically poison. So anyway, November 7th rolls around, and the Mary Celeste departs from New York Harbor on its way to Genoa, Italy. And everyone was just acting natural, you know? The crew was probably just talking about how they were about to make bank by delivering this industrial-grade hand sanitizer to Italy. But then, dun dun dun, something goes horribly wrong. Tragically wrong. So fast forward to December 5th, 1872, another ship, the Dei Gratia, spots the Mary Celeste just sitting out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Its captain being David Morehouse. There was clearly something wrong here. The sails were half up, nobody was on the deck, as far as they could see. The crew was probably like, huh, that's weird. Why is this ship just sitting out here, sails half up, looking like it got dumped at prom? Captain Morehouse ordered 3 of his crewmen to go and check out the ship. 2 of them boarded and started searching the ship top to bottom. And what they found was rather shocking. The sails were tattered, some of them torn down in haste. The ship's hold was flooded with about 3 feet of water. The beds were not made. The skylight was also open. A portion of railing on the port side of the ship was just lying on the deck, and a rope just dangling off the side of the ship. The ship's only lifeboat was also missing. The captain's log's last entry dated to November 24th, but the log slate, which was basically a temporary chalkboard for the crew members, had an entry dating to November 25th. That was at least 10 days before the discovery of the ship in the middle of the ocean. Personal belongings of the captain and his family and the crew were still on board, but what wasn't were their owners. Nobody was on board the ship, except the Dei Gratia's crew. 3 of the Dei Gratia's crew members continued to pilot the ship all the way to Gibraltar, while the captain of the Dei Gratia seemed to be more interested in the salvage money that they'd get for finding this abandoned ship in the middle of the ocean than finding out what happened to the missing crew members. Some popular retellings of this story will state things like, oh, there was fresh hot food on the table, or the captain's log was kept up to the very hour of the crew's disappearance, or I don't know, freaking the ship kept its course perfectly by itself for 10 days.
Which now leads us to the theories.
Theory number 1, piracy. That's right, swarms of pirate ships chased the Mary Celeste for miles and brutally started going after all of the crew members, trying to kill all of them, as many as possible. But every man at sea knows that it is the absolute most disrespect to lay damage to another man's ship. So they be very careful not to strike any part of the ship with their swords. Meanwhile, the captain and all of the other people on the ship that are still alive, they get in the lifeboat or something, or they get brutally chucked off the ship. The pirates win. They celebrate by opening up the skylight, opening up the ventilation shafts, and just to rub salt into the wound, they don't even dare take any of that juicy hand sanitizer in the ship's hold. And then they just freaking left or something. Yeah, no, if it was pirates, the crew's belongings would be gone, that alcohol would be gone, the ship itself would be gone. Yeah, actual pirates would have left some real damage. That was all nonsense I spewed out. But what isn't nonsense is that alcohol used to be a very valuable cargo back in that day. You could get some good monies from transporting this stuff from one part of the ocean to the other part of the ocean. Number 2, mutiny. The ship's crew was just like, Captain Briggs keeps making us eat kale. We're done. But, like, the evidence doesn't even suggest that there was a fight. I mean, yeah, there was a sword found with red stuff. It was the captain's sword. But chemical tests were done on it. It wasn't blood. It was rust. Yeah, so no signs of a fight, no blood, no bodies, no "we hate the captain" graffiti carved into the hull. Just how you know mutiny, because of course this one's in here.
Theory number 3.
Aliens! Because obviously when 10 people vanish from a ship in the 1800s, it's gotta be little green men with a teleportation fetish. I mean, conspiracy theories can be fun sometimes, but unless the aliens were like, yo, we need this specific lifeboat for our intergalactic yard sale, I don't believe this one. Number 4, sea monsters! What? It is said we know more about our moon than we do about the ocean. I mean, we haven't seen anything other than them giant squids. I don't really see how this one works. I mean, I'm just imagining Captain Briggs looking over the side of the ship and seeing this giant tentacle the size of a redwood tree and going, you know what? I don't get paid enough for this. Everyone, lifeboat, now! Moving on. Theory 5. A lot of historians believe that Captain Briggs believed that the ship was going to sink because when they found it, it had a faulty pump and 3 feet of water in the ship's hold. But we gotta remember that Captain Briggs was known as a pretty wise and sensible dude, and not the type to just, oh, wow, it's raining, wow, we should abandon ship. Theory number 16. True conspiracy at its finest. Some people believe that both captains conspired to basically just have Captain Briggs disappear off the face of the earth so that they could collect some juicy insurance fraud money. But the best evidence against this one is the fact that Captain Briggs didn't just have a 2-year-old daughter, he also had an 8-year-old son, Arthur Briggs, who stayed home with his grandparents to work on his schoolwork. And as any great father would do when he's traveling, he wrote letters to his son expressing how much he missed him. I mean, like, what the heck was Captain Briggs supposed to be like, huh? Well, see you never, son! You got a B-.
So yeah, kicking this one to the curb. Woo!
I don't know. What's another theory? Hold on. This next theory is like a half theory, so 27.5, where basically all the crew members forgot how to pilot their own ship and ended up going through the Bermuda Triangle instead of sailing to Genoa. Okay, first of all, how easy is it to find wreckage in the Bermuda Triangle? Not very easy. How on earth was the ship supposed... Dude, the ship would have been gone. How did the Negratius crew find it? What, they just got a secondhand version off of eBay? I don't think so. Moving on. Water spouts or earthquake? What the heck? No, I'm gonna skip that one. Okay, theory number 9. And this one be my favorite, matey. So basically, when traveling with industrial alcohol, is a pretty common occurrence for this alcohol to need ventilation, like everything does. So these barrels rub together, which causes tension, which causes fumes. And sometimes, they can be explosive. Now, the type of explosion we're talking here is basically the wood decides it wants to be a balloon and inflates, and if it's not deflated, then it can explode and cause a number of terrible side effects like migraines. Now, what might give a grown man a mind-splitting headache might be way more severe for a 2-year-old baby. So Captain Briggs decides, you know what, everybody, let's get away from the ship for a little bit. So they leave the ship. Only to never get back on the ship again. And they kind of got stuck on their lifeboat far away from the ship, probably. And so now here they are, in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, with no Wi-Fi and no hope. Alright, now I think I'm just gonna leave it at that. Thank you so much for watching. This was a pretty fun experiment. I laughed so many times listening to my audio recordings. Now, if you want to learn all the hyper details about the Mary Celest, then I would highly recommend watching this video by this guy. It highly inspired this video. Alright, goodbye!